G'day expats and welcome to another episode 94 today on Expat Chat. And as always, I'm joined with my co-host, Brett Evans, mate, friend, colleague, mentor, who is over in the Middle East. He is the managing director for the EMEA region. G'day, Brett. How's the sandpit treating you today?
Mate, full. It's a busy place at the moment. Kids are back at school, first week back, and some sort of semblance of normality is returning. But
Mm,
the problem with school returning means the roads are full, car parks are full, everywhere's
yep.
full. So they need to hang up the sign on Dubai saying we're full. But anyway, that's just
I
me
don't know
having a
how
whinge.
I don't know how those tires don't melt on those roads. I saw you send me that picture on the other day, 51 degrees, I think it was.
51. Yeah, it was the hottest day of the year on Saturday. So,
Yeah,
and you know when you've been here for a while, and even you feel, oh, that's crispy. So, yeah, she was warm, but we're geared for
oh,
it well.
yeah, that's right. I mean, everything's powered by aircon over there. Everything's on
Exactly.
aircon, so
Yeah.
you don't
My
really
my
step out when
favorite
it's that hot.
my favorite one is the you know uh, Aussies love to send around that meme. You don't know what hot is until you sat on a seatbelt. In Australia. You should try sitting on a seatbelt in Dubai. It's even hotter.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, mate. You'd be like,
it's a branding.
jeez.
It's a branding exercise. So you can tell
That's
whatever
right.
car you got on based on what you got. Folks out there, joined by my mate colleague Guru from the Gold Coast, head of the APAC region, Mr. James Ridley, sitting on my left, your right, depending on how you're looking at it. Or if you're
Mm.
listening to us on the podcast, maybe it's your left ear or right ear. I'm not sure how that works, but mate, interesting topic we're going to chat about today. Actually, not financial, but it sort of has a tinge of tax mixed in with it.
Oh, well, it's
Can
topical.
Yeah, it's topical, and that's what we thought we'd address this because a lot of folks are asking this question.
Mm.
Can an expat, Australian expat, vote in the upcoming referendum on the 14th of October? So maybe before we launch into it, let me just quickly get some housekeeping out of the way. All the information that we are going to share with you, good folk, today should be treated as informational and educational purposes only. Please do not take this as personal advice and please speak to a specialist.
Sounds good, mate. Jumping into it, I mean, I don't think Australia's had a successful referendum in a little while now. I think it's over 20 years. So very topical at the moment, especially back in Australia. People asking the question, what way are you going to go? How are you going to vote? What are your thoughts on it? It's probably well overdue, to be honest. But the fact that a lot of expats are asking that question,
Mm.
if I vote, how's that going to be framed in the eyes of the ATO? And is it going to have an impact on my tax residency? So very topical, both in Australia and over the other side of the world. So yeah, a good one to, I suppose, workshop and discuss today.
And it is, and I'm not going to try and regurgitate the AEC website, but they do provide a lot of good information on here. Um, First of all, let's cover off on the eligibility to vote and how to get that process done. And then the second thing, we'll talk about how that ties in with tax residency. Does it not? We'll go through that as well too. So to be eligible to vote, you must be an Australian citizen aged 18 years and over and intending to return to Australia within 6 years. So what they're saying is if you're overseas and intending to return to Australia within 6 years, you can register as an overseas elector. If you are already enrolled, you can register up to 3 months before or within the 3 years after you leave Australia. If you're not already enrolled and have been overseas for less than 3 years, then you first must enroll to vote.
Mm,
Then you can go through that process. Um, Essentially the way that the AEC works, a lot of folks will take their name off the register. So you obviously won't be able to roll up to any of the embassies or consulates to vote on this. You do need to do it in advance. One thing I haven't been able to find is how long it takes because obviously Fort Everett is not very far away.
mm,
So if you are, and that's why we thought we'd do the episode now because at least it gives folks a month and a half to maybe get their chickens in the hen house.
mhm.
But the biggest thing we always talk about is, the time. Obviously, the biggest thing with, the upcoming referendum is how do you vote? So essentially, you'll be able to vote through DFAT trade missions, embassies, consulates, not all
Mm.
of them. You will need to have a look at your local embassy or consulate or trade mission to see whether they are offering it in person or postage. If it's postage involved, remember the last election where Labor won, it was just an absolute hot mess. People weren't getting forms. They were sending
No.
forms back. It wasn't working. It was just all over the place. So
Bit of chaos.
Exactly. So if you can't get to a high commission, an embassy or a consulate, you are able to apply for a postal vote. So they must be sent back to Australia in order for it to be counted. So it comes back to, getting your ducks lined up now if you do want to have your say in a very popular and I guess I'll say divisive, but there's a lot of debate on both sides whether it should get the yes or the no. So the answer is yes, you can do it if you meet that criteria. If you are going to return to Australia within 6 years, you are Australian citizen and you are over the age of 18, then yes, you can enrol as an overseas elector.
Yeah. And I mean, that's, I suppose, everything we need to know in terms of being able to vote. I think the question is, well, should you as a non-resident, and does it impact us from a residency aspect? And it's a terrific question. Obviously the AEC rules, they're not really tethered to tax, but the way the ATO looks at things is, what are all your different individual connections back to Australia? Is it temporary? Is it permanent? If it's more permanent, don't have an issue around non-residency. If it's temporary, are you opening yourself up to any key risks associated with that? We know that with that proposed modernising tax residency rules, which is currently open for consultation again, and I say again because they received feedback when they first released it. When we look at that, obviously the day count's really scary. The 4-factor test, that's really scary. And I would say that this is still maintaining some form of connection back to Australia. Because often, you just let things expire. Your driver's license usually expires, your state driver's license, those sort of things. Your Medicare card commonly might expire as well. You just leave it. When you're maybe re-enrolling to vote purely just for the referendum, personally, I know I'm not encouraging any clients to enrol and vote in this because it's seen as a connection back to Australia. And I'm more concerned about those clients that are in a grey area or they're, I guess, in the Middle East, especially tax-free zones, low tax zones, Singapore. It's something I'm just a bit concerned about. But, voter beware, I guess, if you are going to vote.
I think you're spot on. To me, it's especially if you're in a country that doesn't have a DTA with Australia, so you don't have the protection of the tiebreaker clause.
Agree.
It goes from being black and white to grey. If your situation is grey to start with, it's becoming darker. And I know myself, I remember myself on the AEC list when I left Australia. Am I going to be voting? No. I'm just going to rely on James and the good folk back in Oz to do my thing when it comes to having that say. And from our point of view, we're not going to tell people whether to vote or not. We're going to give them our opinion. Our opinions, no, they shouldn't do it because it's always about the domicile test. The resides test, easy. 183D test, easy. The domicile test. Where is the centre of your universe? Where is home? Where is, when you live your life on a Monday to Friday and a weekend and those daily machinations? And, everyone's on the podcast has always heard me talk about when you leave Australia, you take your Cuba off, and when you move to Dubai, and if you're male, you put the Kandura on. I'm not going to see any Emiratis voting in the referendum, and that's what I want my situation to map. Just just to be an absolute unequivocal, no question marks, no grey, non-resident for tax purposes. I won't do that. But in saying that, I know there's people out there who are very passionate about politics, are very passionate about having their say. So just as you said, beware. If your situation is very, very much in favour of being a non-resident, would this push you over the line? No. If it's on the fence to start with, maybe. So just, make informed decisions. Weigh up all the information that we've been able to espouse and educate you good folk with. Look at your situation. How does that two map together? And that will be a good guide as to whether you do it or not.
100%. Absolutely. And it's going to be interesting. As I said, we haven't had a referendum in Australia for a very long time. It needs to get that double majority. That's based on population and then based on states as well, I believe. That's the double majority. So, it'd be very interesting to see how it actually tracks, because again, it's been so long since we've had one of these. So all to the voting polls on the Saturday, the October.
October 14th. So, mate, I think we wrap it up there. Bit of housekeeping, folks. We've received a couple of reviews and a couple of subscriptions. Keep it up. We love it. We're not being vain when I say that. It just means that it helps us get the message out to others. And the second thing I want to point out is you might remember in the last episode I said I've never met someone who had a HEX debt who moved overseas and notified the ATO within 7 days of them moving what their overseas address is. On that couch 2 days ago, I met someone.
So how'd they have their permanent address already? I mean, that's,
they'll be living in a hotel for 6 months, funded by the company. So that's their address. So yeah.
Yep. Wow.
So,
okay.
I know. So I just had to do that. Like I was just blown away. You could knock me out with a feather when she told me that. I said, "Do you listen to our podcast? I actually said this last week." And she goes, "Well, now you can say it. You can say you met someone." So
most expats are in a transient state for the first couple of months. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, the last thing they're doing is updating their MyGov application with their overseas address. But she's that sort of lady. She's in a past life probably a drill sergeant. She was incredibly prepared when making the move from Australia to Dubai in terms of just researching and just how her brain works. So anyway, just thought I'd share with the good folk out there because it does happen now, apparently, whereas before I've never heard it happen before. But
no,
mate,
not at all.
We'll wrap it up there. Let these good folks get on with their day, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Brett.
Take care, mate. Thanks, mate.